Evening. Welcome to the April 25th, 2022 Rental Housing Committee meeting. The meeting is called to order at 7:01 by my clock. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code 54953E as authorized by resolution of the Rental Housing Committee. Please contact mvrent@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the Rental Housing Committee will participate in the meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so at mountainview.legistar.com, on YouTube at mountainview.gov/YouTube, and on Comcast channel 26. As noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral comments during the public comment period for an item by signing up at mountainview.gov/meeting and entering webinar ID 973-7306-8363, or by phone by dialing 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 937-7306-8363. Any emails received by 5 p.m. today were forwarded to the Rental Housing Committee. Emails received after 5 will not be read during the meeting, but will be entered into the record for the meeting. Now we'll proceed with roll call. Andrea, you want to call it?
Okay, we'll begin with Committee Member Grunwald.
Here.
Committee Member Rosas. Committee Member Ramos.
Present.
Committee Member Pardo Dezella is absent. Vice Chair Haynes Livesay.
Present.
Chair Almond.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. We will now move to agenda item 3, consent calendar. These items will be approved by one motion unless any member of the committee wishes to remove an item for discussion. The purpose of the consent calendar is for the committee to efficiently and quickly consider routine or administrative business items with one motion. Although committee members may remove items, it is generally not intended for the committee to have a lengthy, substantive discussion on consent calendar items. Would any member of the committee like to pull an item? I'm assuming you're not seeing any hands.
No hands.
Okay. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comments on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen.
And I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, whoops. Okay. So I will now, let's see, bring the item back for committee action. Sorry about that. A motion to approve the consent calendar should include reading the titles of the agenda items or the resolutions attached to agenda items 3.1 and 3.2. And I assume I should let you know what those items are. Number 1 is a motion to approve agenda item 3.1, approve the minutes for March 28th, 2022 RHC meeting. And 2, a motion to approve agenda item 3.2, approve resolution making findings authorizing continued remote teleconference meetings of the Rental Housing Committee pursuant to Brown Act provisions as amended by Assembly Bill number 361. So does anyone?
Sorry, there's a hand by Committee Member Ramos.
So I move the consent calendar to approve the minutes for the RHC meeting, March 28, 2022, and adopt a resolution to continue virtual meetings pursuant to Brown Act provisions as amended by AB 361.
Is there a second?
Committee Member, Vice Chair Haynes Livesay.
I will second.
Okay,
We'll go ahead and start with the roll call vote. I'll begin with Committee Member Grunwald,
Aye.
Committee Member Rosas,
Aye.
Committee Member Ramos,
Aye.
Vice Chair Haynes Livesay,
Aye.
Chair Almond.
aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now open the meeting for oral communication from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the committee from acting on non-agenda items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on non-agenda items? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen. Do we have public?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Wow. That's quite amazing. Maybe this is gonna go like really fast, I have a feeling. Okay. We don't have an appeal hearing or public hearing, so we're moving on to new business. We will now move to agenda item 7.1, monthly status reports, March 2022. We will begin with a presentation from staff.
Good evening, committee members, and thank you, Chair Almond. The monthly status report for the month of up through the month of March for the fiscal year 2021-2022 for the rent stabilization program looks like this. We had 3,364 public inquiries so far, with 2,980 of them coming from tenants, almost 2,000 of which were requesting bilingual services with Spanish as the primary language. This represented 61% of all inquiries. 2,325 of these were COVID-19 rent relief related. We've held 30 workshops through the month of March with 273 attendees, 37 office hours. We've also held 64 eviction help center clinics and pop-ups with a total of 1,311 attendees. We've had 7 mass mailings go out, 729 targeted eviction related letters, 32 Mountain View voice ads, and 32 email updates. 110 mediations or conciliations have been requested through the Mountain View Rental Housing Helpline and the Mountain View Mediation Program. This helps to reduce our workload of petitions. 91 of these have been resolved, 18 are pending. We've received 189 banked rent increase notices, 859 termination notices, 1 tenant buyout notice, and 2 additional occupant notices. This is what that looks like graphically. We will start changing this up as we move forward and showing a look back, a little bit further look back for the failure to pay rent notices. As you can see here, we did have a slight uptick in Q3 of 2021-2022 compared to the last quarter of those failure to pay rent notices. This was anticipated due to the end of the state rent relief program and some of the eviction protections. We've had no properties go into redevelopment in 2022 with 0 units affected, and we have had 1 household that has received a relocation assistance through our tenant relocation assistance ordinance. We have 9 petitions this year so far we're in the hearing process during the month of March with 1 in review. We have 1 decided and 1 petition that's been withdrawn. The market continues to recover from the height of the pandemic. We are seeing a vacancy rate for fully covered units that continues to drop. It's down to 5.8%. Staff is anticipating this will continue to recover according to market trends, and its units are still being held off of the market as well. So it's not a true vacancy rate. We have seen a significant rebound in the the cost of fully covered units and the cost of all units, as you can see represented here. The average price of fully covered units at this point is $2,614. And we have 16 properties that have transacted on the marketplace, representing a total of 152 units. And there are 5 properties that are currently for sale. These are just normally transacting units. They are not anticipated to go into redevelopment at this time. And it's something very common in the marketplace. That concludes this portion of the monthly status report. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to the eviction prevention program. So this is an overview of the eviction prevention program. We will be providing a more robust review of the program next month's meeting, or in June, but we're anticipating next month. So we have held 51 clinics, including 2 pop-up events with 751 tenants attending, representing 349 individual households that were able to apply for the state rent relief program through the city's eviction help center. That is a significant number. We've actually helped, we think, around 400 if we go all the way back to May of 2021, when we first started helping people fill out rent relief applications. We'll know more again once we run those more detailed numbers. 85% of our households that have come to the Eviction Help Center for assistance have needed assistance in a language other than English. So this is where our wonderful multicultural engagement program from the city manager's office has been so crucial to our success here. They have provided a lot of support to this program and are one of the reasons why it can function. 91% of community members have heard about our services through other community members or through activities like hand-to-hand flyering. That was very effective in our community. For the households, the majority of them have 3 or more people living in the household, and the majority of them make less than $25,000 as a household, not as individuals. So these are truly, again, our most vulnerable community members. 49% of households have also applied to the city's rent relief program, and they received an average of 2.3 months of assistance from that program. 24% have received termination notices, and that represents 145 clients that requested and received legal assistance through our Eviction Help Center. The average household is also 2.4 months behind on rent when they come to us. And that's these numbers here that you're seeing. And then this is some of the details about what we're doing to support the Eviction Help Center. We've had 2,742 public inquiries related to evictions or rent relief or eviction protections. We've held 13 pop-up events and reached 490 community members. We've held 21 webinars and trainings, with 11 of them being bilingual in English and Spanish, and reached 152 community members that way. We've had 3 postcards go out, 729 targeted mailings. So these are courtesy follow-up letters for failure to pay rent termination notices. We have seen a correlation between these going out and people coming into the Eviction Help Center. And we've sent out 14 targeted emails. We have 3 website pages that we maintain in 3 languages, and 3 informational flyers that are routinely updated and maintained in 4 languages. We've had 1 short video, 32 weekly Mountain View voice ads, 1 press release, 7 news media coverage pieces in English with 1 in Spanish, and we've had 6 multilingual social media posts that have all been shared through Nextdoor, WhatsApp, WeChat, and other community organizations. For the termination notices, this is the same information that you saw on the other chart, but we also highlight it here for continuity's sake. Again, we have 353 failure to pay rent notices, which is a slight uptick compared to the quarter before, but is anticipated. I'm giving an update now on the state rent relief program as well. You can see here they have stopped accepting applications, but they are still reviewing them. So there's 905 complete household applications. So far, they've been able to serve 503 of those. So they have 400 more to go. And it represents about $5.5 million in funding. It again does mirror our demographics of households that are speaking a language other than English and are making less than 30% of the area median income, which is right about what we're showing. That concludes staff's presentation on the monthly status report. Are there any questions?
Vice Chair Haynes Livingston.
I'm just curious on the eviction prevention program numbers. When we're looking at like the changes month over month for things like how many months are we behind and whatnot, could we get little ups or downs next to them in the future showing like if it went up or down or stayed flat? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I can add that in.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
It went up by 0.1.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Thank you.
Of course, I can definitely do that. Thank you. Any other questions or suggestions before we go to public comment on this item?
I'm just surprised that the state only received 905 applications. Just
This is
seemed,
for the city of Mountain View specifically.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that's different. I thought statewide that seemed way too small. That was all I was commenting on.
okay.
Okay. So there are no questions or comments from other committee members. Since there are no more questions, I now invite public comment. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen.
All right, looks like we have no hands.
And this meeting is moving right along. Okay. Next, we'll go into committee deliberations and provide feedback.
I know we had a hand by committee member Ramos.
I just wanted to say thanks to staff for handling what was probably a very hectic month in regards to the eviction moratorium and whatnot. I'm kind of curious to see, or I am overall curious. There's generally more than data and numbers, but like, how was the overall feeling when you met with people? How have the clinics been going, or the walk-in sessions going? Have they calmed down? Have they are people confused still? Or it's hard to get that in numbers.
And it will definitely provide more of the actual qualitative and quantitative feedback from the community that we've received when we go over the full review of the program that was requested. But to provide a little bit of insight, it was slower this month as anticipated, because we don't have the ability to any longer help people apply for state rent relief since they're no longer accepting applications. But we did still have a pretty good number of people show up for all four. Well, that was six days that we were open this month, as we kind of are switching over to having our programming be twice a month instead of 8 times a month. So we are making that transition as well. And overall, people are still checking the needing help and assistance checking the status of their rent relief applications. We are still fielding calls and providing that assistance, or sending the information for these clients over to the community partners that are appropriate for them. And we have had interesting and different types of assistance needed this month compared to the months before, including more assistance related to habitability concerns, questions related to petitions, questions related to rent increases. So some of that is shifting as well, which we're happy to see that the outreach and efforts that were put in to build the relationships with the community are continuing, and we will continue to build that out as we expand our outreach efforts too.
I think the amount of outreach in all the different capacities that we do is just, I'm always amazed at the numbers that you present. You think you had an army of people doing all of this.
We do. We're very lucky actually to have quite an impactful community of volunteers and other organizations that help disseminate and distribute information on our behalf. And I definitely want to recognize their efforts as well.
Absolutely.
Committee member Rosas has the hand.
So I too want to thank the staff for all the hard work they've done this month and last month. I do have a question. So you did mention that there's over 400 applications still to be served. Do we have an idea or would we know when these 400 applications will be served?
So that's from the state. This is the state processing applications. We don't have any power control or oversight, or very little insight as well into that and those processes. The state has made public in past communications, this is communication that was about a month old, that at their current pace, which was a month ago, it would take up until potentially late fall, early winter to finish. But they are processing applications much more quickly than they had been. So I'm assuming that those numbers have changed. On the policy side, the current eviction protections for people who have active rent relief applications through the state are held in place until June 30th. That could be extended as well. I think that the HCD, the department that runs this program, requested an extension until August because they were anticipating that they might be able to process these applications by August. So we'll see what the state legislature ends up determining and whether or not they'll continue to provide the eviction protections that they currently are.
Okay, well, thank you, because I just was curious, especially when community members ask to what they should be looking for. So now you're giving me a lot of information. Like, for example, it's a public information, and then in that they can come to us and you can give them a, just a rough overview of
They
when.
can definitely have them reach out to us. They can email us directly at mvrent@mountainview.gov. Anytime you have any questions like that, you can send them directly to us and we can help.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the committee?
I would like to add for what Patricia just said, that in the help clinics or emailing to us, if they still need help for April, May, June rent, please reach out to us as well. We're partnering with other agencies that might have some funds available. So please don't let them just move out. Have them contact us first to see where and what we can do for them.
Thank you,
That's
Anki.
great.
Thank you, Anki. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's
There,
awesome.
to also definitely have them reach out to us. We have a steps flyer on what to do if anyone receives an eviction notice. And if you hear of any landlord that needs assistance navigating the process as well, we provide support and help for both landlords and tenants at the Eviction Help Center. And we do have landlords that have reached out to us and received support through the program as well. And the steps flyer goes into details about what tenants should do if they receive an eviction notice, including contacting us. Also, on the back side of it, it has detailed information for contact, who they should contact, when they should contact them, and what they should do. So please, please, please have them reach out to us. And we'll also send you the Eviction Help Center flyer and the steps flyer as well. They are also on the website.
Great. That's fantastic. So no, we're not just dropping them off the side of a cliff.
Not at all, no.
Great.
Vice Chair?
On that point, I know early in the pandemic, there were several organizations in the community that were raising funds to help with things like rent. I haven't seen nearly as much push of that, but are there organizations that we know about that if someone is looking to be charitable in that way and help those organizations, like could we help them find them? For a while there, like Los Altos Community Foundation, I think was partnered with the Mountain View and Silicon Valley Community Foundation to try and do some things around this. And I really haven't heard much in over a year on it.
So those are all things that if people are looking for rent assistance, they should reach out to us again, like Anki mentioned, because we can reach out to the organizations that are essentially distributing those funds. So there's a lot of different organizations that are distributing funds that are grouped together specifically for rent assistance. It might not any longer be COVID related rent assistance, it might be broader rent assistance. There's also in Mountain View, the Mountain View Solidarity Fund that has specific qualifications for applicants. But again, if people reach out to us, we can help tap them into where they should be looking for assistance and what they should be looking for assistance from or for.
And same thing if they want to like donate money to that cause to get it back into the community.
We can definitely also help assist look into that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Committee Member Ramos?
I was just adding on to what Patricia was saying. The county has something called the Homeless Prevention Services, which is a connection of a whole bunch of nonprofits, including CSA and Sacred Heart Community Services that provide that kind of rent relief stuff. And that will be a good place to direct them. The Solidarity Fund offers direct financial assistance. I don't know how much more they have left of that, but they have direct financial assistance for other costs, or what we like to call shadow debt, which is the debt that can't be paid back through the state program or through the Mountain View's rent relief program. So those are the places that we would direct them to. But knowing how amazing our staff is and their lovely dogs too, they have all those resources available.
We work closely with CSA, and CSA is actually at the Eviction Help Center with us every time that it's open. So people can just come right to the Eviction Help Center and receive that connection point.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other hands raised or comments or questions? Okay. Then we move on to 7.2. Agenda item 7.2, quarterly financial expenditures report, fiscal year 2021 to 2022 through March 31, 2022. We will begin with a presentation from staff.
Thank you, Chair Almond and the Rental Housing Committee members. As we do on a quarterly basis, we review the financial expenditures of the CSFRA program. And these numbers are through March 31st, 2022. Just for background information, last year in June, the Rental Housing Committee adopted the budget for this fiscal year in the amount of $2,162,066. And we are giving you an overview right now where we are with this budget. Next slide, please. We divide this budget in 4 categories. It's personnel services, non-personnel services, capital outlay, and interfund expenditures. In the personnel services category, we've spent 53.65% is expended. This is below budget due to the lasting impact of the filling of the position of the analyst in December of 2029, and work that our staff is providing for other departments, and that can be charged to other index numbers, programs that have to relate that are related to COVID-19, and tenant relocation assistance, and the startup of the mobile home rent stabilization ordinance. In non-personnel services, we've expended 35% and 35.61 expend, and 43.45% is encumbered. This covers all the professional services, and it's below budget due to the later quarterly billing of the service providers, lower than anticipated legal fees, and fewer petition hearing requests with fewer need of hearing officer services. Then the capital outlay has been expended for 16.42%. This is for the buildup and maintenance of our database. And it's below budget due to further deliverables of 3DI for this database, and further invoicing upon completion of these deliverables. And then the last category is the interfund expenditures, which was for 100% expended at the end of December. $295,270 has been charged back to the city for services rendered to other divisions in the city. Looking at the complete budget, as you can see, slightly over 50% has been expended of the budget by the end of March, with personnel being the biggest category, 22.8%, followed by the interfund expenditure and the non-personnel expenditures. So the recommendation for today is to review these expenditures and provide feedback to staff. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Everybody's happy with it. Since there are no more questions, I now invite public comment. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen. Andrea, are there any public interested in commenting?
There are no hands.
Okay. I feel like this is a ghost meeting. There's nobody out there.
Oh,
Okay.
we have a hand.
Oh, good.
All
Okay.
right.
I spoke too soon. Go ahead.
Just hoping. There we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask Joan to unmute.
Thank you. I'm curious, what happens to that 50% excess of the budget that's a surplus? I don't know if I can ask a question and get an answer, or if that just.
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. Any funds that are not being spent this year will be carried over to next year, and that provides the starting fund. So less fees need to be charged because we still have leftover funds from this year.
All right, we have another hand by Alex. I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute.
Hey, just want to prove I'm not a ghost and say you all are worth every penny. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. They certainly are. Any other questions or comments from the public? No?
No.
Was that a no? I couldn't quite hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah, there are no other hands.
Okay, thanks. So next we go into committee deliberations and provide feedback.
Committee Member Ramos.
I think the budget expenditures look good, and if staff needs more money, all you need to do is ask. And thank you, you're worth every penny, like the commenter said.
Vice Chair Lindsay.
I also agree the budget looks very nice. It honestly makes me happy to see that we're having a surplus, and it will be very nice next year for the fee reduction that it'll mean. But it also seems to suggest that we're starting to see somewhat costs that we can predict and that they're not astronomically high, which means our fees don't have to be astronomically high, which gives me encouragement for, you know, the initial years of the program, maybe fees were higher than they are now and the startup costs getting settled, but then moving forward, we've been able to kind of get a nice stasis. So that's really encouraging to see. So I'm really pleased to see that we're kind of leveling out here. That's it.
I agree. That's really great. So is this going to possibly mean that we won't have to charge $300 for mobile home spaces?
Yeah, this budget is for the CSFRA, which is completely separate from the budget from the MHRSO. So those two programs are not financially interrelated.
Right, right. So these cost savings will not impact the mobile home budget because that's separate. All right, sorry about that confusion. Okay. Any other comments or yeah, it looks really great. I can't believe we're only spending 50% of what we laid out, but it makes sense. Okay. If there are no more, I think then we move on to 7.3. We will now move to agenda item 7.3, draft amendments to chapters 7 and 11 of CSFRA regulations. We will begin with a presentation from staff.
Thanks. I'm going to be doing the presentation. So the purpose is to amend CSFRA regulations, chapter 7, the procedures for annual general adjustments, to change the contact information in the mandatory notice to tenant in the case of a banked AGA, and then to also amend CSFRA regulations, chapter 11, registration, to add a requirement that landlords provide a notice of applicability of Community Stabilization and Fair Rent Act at the commencement of a new tenancy. Go to the next slide. So the Chapter 7 amendment is relatively small. It's just an amendment to change the contact information in the mandatory notice that goes out to tenants when they are receiving a notice of a banked rent increase. So this will change the telephone number and the email address in the mandatory text of the notice that goes out to tenants. It's just updating it to clarify the new contact information, so tenants will have the proper information when they receive these notices. Next slide. And then the Chapter 11 amendments. So at the November meeting, the committee adopted regulations requiring mobile home landlords to provide mobile homeowners and tenants with a notice of applicability of the mobile home rent stabilization ordinance. And this amendment is just intended to bring the CSFRA regulations into line with the MHRSO and have them mirror each other as closely as possible. So this proposed amendment would require the a similar notice of applicability of the CSFRA at the commencement of any new tenancies. The contents of that notice would include the existence and the scope of the CSFRA, whether the rental unit is covered, partially exempt, or fully exempt, and information about the tenant's right to petition against certain rent increases. The information about the exemptions is important in case the exemptions are ones that expire, and or if the tenant now wants to challenge the exemption and object to it potentially under the regulations that were recently adopted. So this is one area where it, as currently written, this would be applicable to tenancies commencing on May 1st. Staff's recommendation would be to actually push that back to June 1st and give landlords some additional time, since this was originally supposed to be considered at the March meeting, which would have given them roughly a month to comply. But so potentially we might want to push that back to a June 1st, 2022 start date. And then lastly, we require a copy of the notice to be filed with the landlord's initial rent registration and any subsequent change in tenancy. And then the notice of the applicability of the CSFRA would have to be provided within 15 days after the expiration of any exemption. Next slide. So staff's recommendation is to amend CSFRA regulations chapter 7 to change the contact info in the mandatory notice to tenant in case of a banked annual general adjustment, and also to amend CSFRA regulations chapter 11 to add the requirement that landlords provide the notice of applicability of CSFRA at the commencement of a new tenancy. And these should probably be done as separate motions when you all consider them, but happy to take any questions before that.
Sorry. Are there any questions or comments? Let's start with chapter 7.
I'm sorry, could you keep it up, the amendments, please?
That's a good idea. So chapter 7 is procedures for the annual general adjustments to change the contact information in the mandatory notice to tenant in case of a banked annual general adjustment. Are there any questions or comments on this item?
Vice Chair?
I do have a question. We received correspondence regarding this item right before the meeting, and I don't know if anyone would be able to answer this, but in that correspondence, it was indicated that this proposed chapter 7 resolution is the subject of stakeholder meetings this week, but that was unclear to me because I did not think that was what was being discussed in the stakeholder meetings. Does anyone have clarity on what that was related to?
You mean the stakeholder meeting?
No,
So-
how chapter 7 is being discussed in the stakeholder meeting specifically.
So in the stakeholder meeting, we are going to discuss the definition of base rent and how conciliations need to be assessed, taking into account that definition of base rent. Here, we're just trying to change the contact information. We will review the template to see if there are any there's probably a reference made to base rent. But we will definitely review it after that stakeholder meeting to see if any of that language need to be adjusted or not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Committee Member Ramos?
This is a quick one relating to the slide right before this. The notice would be provided within 15 days after expiration of exemption. Is that exemption when there's an owner living in the unit? Okay, all right, I was just curious. There's no other exemptions, are there? That would change over time.
Potentially, if some housing is deed restricted affordable and the restriction expires, that's very unlikely, but another potential place where that might apply.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I was muted.
Committee Member Grunwald.
Oh, sorry. Did the chair want to, Chair, you were speaking. Did you want to make a comment?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My question was regarding the change to chapter 11, also related to the correspondence we received earlier today. If I'm understanding, if you go one slide back, would there be a requirement that, for instance, single family home rentals would need to include this by adding this to the regs? Are we expanding the requirement that units that are already exempt would need to put that into the lease?
No, this would just be for anyone that currently registers and claims an exemption. They would be required to provide a notice about whether the unit is exempt to the tenants. Any new tenants that are coming in.
I see. But because I think I was looking at the Exhibit A, there is an option. One of the options that I guess you would check the box for these options of why it is fully exempt. Is single family home, companion unit, or duplex. But yeah, sorry, it sounds like that's not a concern, because if I'm reading it correctly, was that the concern of the correspondence? And I just want to make sure that we are crystal clear that that's not a concern.
Let me take a look at it really.
In the meantime, I was hoping that we could consider chapter 7 and then separately chapter 11, because I don't know about anybody else, but I find it confusing to keep jumping back and forth. So that maybe we could see if there's agreement on chapter 7, we could take a vote on that and then look at chapter 11. What do people think? Emily?
So I don't mind splitting the question up, but before we take decisions like that, I would love for us to go to public comment first.
Sure.
A question,
ahead.
I guess, for Anki or Patricia. Currently, we don't have people register if they are fully exempt. Is that right?
That's correct. So if you look at the CSFRA, let me grab it real quick. So we have them register if they initially fall under the CSFRA, but they want to claim an exemption under 1703. So the additional homeowner protections under 1704, those do not need to register, or we don't call them exemptions, we call them, they are not covered by the CSFRA.
Right.
So only the 1703 cases we feel we call them exemptions. So it could be any of these 5, 6 numbers.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so I guess in that case, that could potentially be revised to remove that requirement for those units that are not covered, so that those landlords don't have to provide the notice.
Would that require changing the language on this?
Yes, it would require just striking out that subsection that calls for fully exempt units to provide notice.
Is that the part that starts with contents would include existence and scope of CSFR? Is that the section you're talking about?
Yes, but I believe there's just a subsection that refers specifically to single family homes, duplexes, and companion units that could be removed.
So I think it would be removing B1.
Can you display that?
I don't know, Patricia, do you have the regulations?
I can pull them up. Just give me 1 second.
Thanks. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm a visual learner. If I don't have it in front of me, it's hard to get a handle on it.
So in that list that's being displayed, B1 would be removed and the rest would be renumbered.
So if we want to entertain a motion after public comment, do we need to have a friendly amendment to remove that?
That can be part of the motion.
Right. Great. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
I have a hand from Vice Chair Haynes Lipsey and followed by a hand by Committee Member Grunwald.
Okay.
And maybe this is better for deliberation, but it is somewhat a question. If I'm reading this, even if we take out section FB1, I think we have to slice and dice more, because otherwise what I believe we're then saying is that a landlord who owns, let's say, a single family home, companion unit, or duplex would still need to give the notice of the existence and scope of the CSFRA. They just wouldn't be required to cite their exemption. And I'm not sure that that achieves what we were previously talking about. Or am I misreading that? Because I read that as a cascade, right?
Okay, so the landlord is written with a capital L, so I think we need to probably be a little bit more clear who needs to file this. So if you read the definition of a landlord, you probably get to only CSFRA covered units, but it behooves us to be a little bit more clear here and write it full out.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Committee Member Grunwald, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I had same, very similar comment to the vice chair. So maybe that's better left until deliberation. I don't have any questions for the chapter 7 modification. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else have questions or comments at this point?
There are no other hands.
Okay, since there are no more questions, I now invite public comment. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen.
It looks like we have a hand by Joshua Howard. I'll ask you to unmute.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Howard with the California Apartment Association. Tonight, I'm expressing significant concerns with the proposal outlined to amend the Chapter 11 regulations to require an unknown, unvetted information sheet be given to every tenant. It seems only appropriate that this information sheet in its totality is presented to the RHC and adopted and only amended by RHC resolution. While informing tenants of their rights is critical, adopting a regulation today to supposedly take effect in 4 business days is absurd, lacks due process, and ignores the values of transparency and stakeholder engagement. Fully exempt units are not subject to the CSFRA, and they are not subject to the jurisdiction of the RHC. Appreciate you looking to remove B1, but you also need to remove any requirements for B8. You have no jurisdiction over the fully exempt units. In addition, you need to look at giving more time and more flexibility to how this notice would be implemented. A notice should be simple, direct, and rather than be a full notice, it should be allowed to be posted in a conspicuous place like many other required postings a landlord must post. The city of San Jose, for example, requires that the apartment rent ordinance disclosure is posted in a common area or provided as part of the tenancy agreement. It is the landlord's choice. So I urge you to look at other ways to make this less bureaucratic and less burdensome. Additionally, who maintains, who updates the information sheet? A version was sent around recently that had inaccurate information, misleading information, and was seemingly biased. Given any new standard operating procedure that the RHC seeks to impose, any new requirement must be 1, publicly reviewed, 2, adopted by resolution of the RHC to ensure it's been vetted, including the totality of the notice, and it must be simple, non-biased, and allowed to be posted in a common area to meet the disclosure requirements. It's unfortunate that this is at least the 2nd time in 2 meetings that a major regulation has been brought forward with no stakeholder engagement or no stakeholder notice. This is lack of due process, and it's troublesome. I ask that you review this notice carefully, allow time to incorporate this idea of the information sheet or notice into a landlord's standard operating procedures, and find creative ways to reduce the burden in paperwork. Rental housing providers want to do what they do best, provide homes. All of these regulations do nothing to make housing more available. The California Apartment Association and its members in Mountain View encourage you to, 1, require that the information sheet be a posting that's made available and posted in a common area. 2, is simple, is flexible, and adopted by resolution of the Rental Housing Committee, and that you look to include stakeholders and stakeholder review in any information item that's required to be posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Are there any other members of the public on the line that want to make a comment?
I see a hand by Edie Keating. I'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you. So regarding correct contact information, I have to agree with that. And regarding the intent in the discussion of the RHC just now to not have the requirements for regulation about fully exempt units, I think is, appropriate. So there's, in this resolution, I think you would want to make, look at it fully. One thing it might say, instead of saying, is it fully or partially exempt, you might want to say, is it fully or partially covered? Or you might want to say, just, is it partially exempt? Because if it's fully exempt, you're not sending those notices out there. So some minor wording changes could clarify the ordinance about notice. And while it's good to have notices that aren't wordy, there may be need for changes to exact notices in the future. So to have the some discretion to change the notice going forward without it coming back to the RHC, I think is appropriate. I think it would be great to have both, to have the posting of the units that are covered and also to have it in the packet. But because in one building, in some Mountain View apartments, there are all kinds of, all categories of exemption or non-exemption from the CSFRA. I think the most important thing to do is to provide to the appropriate units that those that are covered, that they are covered, either covered in full or covered partially. So generally, I'm very supportive, and I hope you pay attention to the details of the ordinance. Thank you.
Andrea, are there any other members of the public waiting to make comments?
I do not see any other hands.
You do not see, okay.
Do not.
Okay, then I bring it back to the committee for deliberations.
Committee Member Ramos?
So to go back to what we were agreeing to beforehand, I'm going to split the question up so that we can pass chapter 7 first, and then we can deal with the, how do I say this? The adjusting of chapter 11. Does that sound good to everyone? I'm just going to put the motion out there for chapter 7. So I move we amend the CSFRA regulations, chapter 7, procedures for annual general adjustments to change the contact information in the mandatory notice to tenant in case of a banked annual general adjustments.
Thank you, Committee Member Ramos. Is there a second for that?
Committee Member Rosas?
I would like to second that motion.
Andrea, want to call the roll?
All right, let's go ahead and begin with Committee Member Grunwald.
Aye.
Committee Member Rosas?
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Aye.
Okay.
Committee Member Ramos?
Aye.
Vice Chair Haynes Livesay?
Aye.
Chair Almond?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now we move on to the more prickly chapter 11. Is there anybody who's willing to come up with the new language, or do we need to send it back to staff to make corrections?
We are more than happy to take in your feedback and come back with a altered text if you guys like.
I see hands by Committee Member Ramos and a hand by Committee Member Vice Chair Haynes Livesay.
So I would defer to the vice chair because she's much smarter about the languaging regulations than I am. So I'll defer to her if she doesn't mind.
I disagree about the qualitative comment there, but I will make my comment all the same. I am trying to, on the fly, toggle to do this. And I actually, my recommendation would be that we do give feedback and have this go back to staff for modification. Landlord in the CSFRA, if I pulled it up properly, is actually defined in such a way that I do believe that this could have contradictory language in it if we attempted to slice and dice on our own. Landlord doesn't expressly involve covered versus non-covered units based on my very quick 30-second read here. So I think we may want to, instead of looking to pass this, provide some commentary on where we're trying to go with it, and then allow this to come back maybe in the May meeting with the goal of having a short, quick discussion on it. So that would be my recommendation. It's not a motion, it's just a recommendation. And that's it.
Committee Member Rosas?
I'm sorry, can we go back to the text slide, please? Then that way it's visual for everyone.
Yes, thank you.
I do have a question though, also. My question is, and it may not be related to this, but it's just something I'm curious about. So my question is, when we talk about stakeholders and a way to vet this, how is that process done?
Yeah, so what we're doing is, for the issue that was not discussed in the last meeting, but we decided to hold a stakeholder first to receive input and feedback from people in the community that are interested in the topic. We will summarize that and bring that back to the Rental Housing Committee together with a proposal. And then the Rental Housing Committee can deliberate and learn about all the stakeholder feedback before they're making a decision.
But that
Okay.
was, that was specific to the base rent discussion, right?
The one that is organized for August the 28th is with regards to the base rent and concessions, correct?
For April 28th, yeah. Okay. Committee Member Grunwald?
Sure, thank you. The vice chair was mentioning something similar, but I don't feel comfortable trying to go through and edit this Exhibit A on the fly. I think a lot of the issues that were raised by Mr. Howard are concerning and something we want to get right, and that I don't think we'll be able to do that on the fly in this meeting. So I'd recommend a stakeholder meeting, and everyone collaborating to try to get to the right language there. I would also add, for inserts in different jurisdictions, I mean, there are many inserts that need to be put into a lease about smoking, any carcinogens. There's a lot of state laws and things that influence what you would need to put into a lease of anyone starting a tenancy. Ideally, if we could get the mountain, everything that we want to communicate about the CSFRA and Mountain View regulation into one page, I think we could save paper, make it efficient. And I think that, Exhibit A kind of bleeds right now. I know we'd probably, we would change the spacing in the final version, but right now it just kind of bleeds over to 2 pages. And I'm not sure if that's, necessary. And it does add up to a lot of paper when there's thousands of units in Mountain View. Also, we could put the contact information right at the top for tenants, right? If you have any questions. I think there's a lot of language here that would be confusing to a lot of people, and a lot of detail, and they may just want to talk to someone, and we have the funds and the contact channels open to receive that. So I might recommend something that's more visual, 1 page, and that lastly, I'd ask that I feel like this needs to be our process whenever the flyer is, or the insert is being changed. We've had, this is, as Mr. Howard mentioned, this is the second meeting where there have been implications that were not considered to language changes. And when they were put on the agenda, I might have just, rubber stamped them through. They seemed like they were framed as smaller text changes. And with base rent, especially, I had not thought of a lot of the feedback that we got from the community about what could happen if we were just to change that definition. So I would like to change, I'd recommend that we formalize a process for when some of these regs or the flyer are going to be changed. Thanks.
Committee Member Ramos?
So some generalized feedback. I'm not inclined to have stakeholder groups for every single regulation that we're going to bring up. That is, and I also don't think that's committee member Grunwald's intention either. I think I trust staff and staff's judgment to get this. And when there are changes to regulations, we think it through, we get feedback, and that's the whole point of having a public meeting and having people speak in public comment. I do understand the frustration of the time frame from when agendas drop versus versus when we pass them. I asked staff to find ways to maybe not have such a short. I remember early on we had a discussion about having agendas out earlier, even if it was incomplete, although it doesn't really affect this issue in particular, but at least people would have a heads up that a particular item is up. So I would love for us to get back to that. I also do not want us to have us vote on how we want exactly the form to be. That is also something I rely on staff to think through, connect through, and use their best judgment on. Our job is to understand the regulations and empower the staff with the regulations that we have to clarify our understanding of the CSFRA. So I actually understand why we are doing this. I think when I read the comment, the letter from the I believe it was Prometheus that we got sent earlier today. My understanding is I think they were just concerned that my understanding is that Prometheus actually has a lot of new units that are not covered under the CSFRA at all. And seeing this, they assumed or thought that we were requiring their completely uncovered units to be under this regulation. I think that's what's causing a lot of the issues right now. Now that we know that that's not the purpose of this regulation, I'm actually overall fine with it. I'm okay with taking staff taking a stab at it, or our brilliant vice chair taking a stab at language for it to make it more clear that that is the case. And I'm also prepared to pass it if we manage to come with that language tonight. If not, I'm perfectly fine with it coming back. So that is where I am.
Vice Chair?
So I will say that the way that this is written is not the expressed intention. I'm confident of that at this juncture. This would actually do the thing that Prometheus' letter was concerned about, because anyone who is in essence a housing provider, based on our definition of landlord, which does not include covered versus uncovered, would be required to have this notice. It would just be any owner, lessor, or sublessor, or any other person entitled to receive rent for the use and occupancy of any rental unit or an agent, representative, predecessor, or successor of the foregoing. So I do think we need to allow this to be modified. Not today on the dais, but taken away and modified. I think that we also need to give clear instructions to staff as to what we're going for here and what we're wanting to see of this, because right now this is written like we are just looking for basically a notification of here's what the CSFRA is, that it exists, and you are exempt or partially exempt or not. Which I'm not sure if that's actually the only goal here or not. It somewhat makes sense on a partially exempt unit. I'm not sure it does in any other context, because we already have a required notice that the CSFRA exists, I believe, for covered units. So I'm also wondering if we're maybe going at this the wrong way. In terms of the stakeholder component, you know, I think stakeholder input is valuable. I do wonder if we need to have, instead of full stakeholder meetings all the time, something like a trusted board or sources that we could go to for some feedback. That doesn't require opening a whole stakeholder meeting, but just having sounding boards. It can be valuable to be able to sit down with people and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. What would your instinctual response to this be? So that things are not in a vacuum where it doesn't require the notice and planning and all of that of a stakeholder meeting. It's more of a conversational back and forth. So I don't know if we have that back channel, but it might be something valuable to build out that would negate the need for full stakeholder meetings while also allowing us to have some back and forth and some feedback. So that's just an idea. But in the short term, I don't think we can, I personally would not be comfortable passing this tonight because of the level of edits I would need to do on the fly. And the fact that I don't have this in an unlocked copy where I can redline it, I don't feel confident that I can get it right doing it verbally without a red line. So I would highly encourage us to send this back with commentary. And that's it.
Committee Member Greenwald.
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify my comments to committee member Ramos's point. Yeah, not necessarily stakeholder meetings for every item for sure, but something like editing the flyer or inserts that have to be put in, that have to be notices that have to be given to each person. I think just like formalizing the amount of lead time that we're going to give at least 60 days before you have to reprint, reprint that insert, or ideally just more lead time. I would be frustrated, I think, if I saw this on an agenda and it says 4 days. To the vice chair's point, not necessarily, maybe not a full stakeholder meeting. I know that takes a lot of lead time to set up. One, I think talking to other jurisdictions, right? Like I think the base rent issue, would that have gone through the same way to the agenda phase? Did we collect all the feedback from other jurisdictions about how they define base rent? So that can be a separate discussion. I'd like to learn more about that when we bring that up as a full agenda item, because did they have any feedback on us having a different definition and what the implications could be there? But if we talk to other jurisdictions and do our due diligence there, maybe then as the vice chair mentioned, other stakeholders who could give us that input on either the landlord side or tenant groups, I think would be if we could say we're going to do that as part of a process for a certain small. Just changing the insert, I guess, or what needs to be noticed to it directly to the tenants. Thanks.
Are there any other comments or deliberations, questions?
Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh man, I hate to do this. Should in our list of work plan items to do, should we have a policy on at what point should we have a stakeholder meeting? I feel like that might be also some clarity to have as well. I also agree with giving some more time for the housing providers to, if we're making the requirement, giving them at least a month or 60 days, what committee member Grunwald said, to comply once we pass it. But other than that, that's all I have for feedback that wasn't already said.
Staff would like to provide a little input into what we had planned regarding community meetings. Before the pandemic hit in 2020, we had planned to have quarterly community meetings, just to provide an opportunity for community members to give feedback and insights into what they're experiencing, what they're hearing, and provide more of an opportunity for dialogue. Perhaps that was something that staff was planning to start up again in fiscal year 2022-23. And perhaps that would provide an avenue for the avenue for feedback that you're looking for. It is something that we were planning anyway.
I think that would be very helpful and hopefully mitigate some of this. I mean, I think part of the problem that we're coming up against is that we're trying to, move all of these regulations through relatively quickly, so that we have the full package. And, I don't think we could, even if we put it into the work plan, I don't think we could predict what items are going to require stakeholders or input from community. And I agree with Emily that that's why we have public meetings. I don't know that, I just feel a little bit ambivalent about deciding that we need another oversight committee over us. We're submitting these to council. People are able to come to our meetings and give input and provide correspondence. As far as weighing in on this item, I definitely think that it needs to go back to staff and come back at a later meeting once it's more refined. Committee Member Rosas.
So in the interest of being more transparent, I think that if staff can, if they're already thinking about doing quarterly meetings, I would agree that that would be a good idea. Obviously, I don't want to overburden them because I know they do have a lot of work to do. So, but that sounds to me like a good idea. I am in the idea that we should bring this up with more clarity, specifically because there's lots of language here that needs to be looked at a lot more carefully. So I am supporting Emily's ideas, so staff can get more clarity in terms of what we would like to see, with the addition of the quarterly meetings, if that's all possible.
Are there any other hands raised? I'm not seeing any, but I have a problem with my screen.
No, there are no other hands.
Okay. I guess I would like to know whether staff feels they have enough direction at this point to take it back and bring it back in a new format.
Yes, thank you.
Great. If there aren't any more deliberations, I'm going to move on. So at this point, we're on at 7.4. Now, Mobile Home Rent Stabilization Program recommended budget for fiscal year 2021-22 and fiscal year 2022-23, and establishment of a space rental fee. We will begin with a presentation from staff. That was a tongue twister.
Thank you, Chair Almond and members of the Rental Housing Committee. As we've discussed in the last Rental Housing Committee meeting, a budget was presented for your review and feedback. Next slide, please. And today we're going to adopt hopefully a resolution of this budget as discussed in the last meeting, and set the space rental fee supporting the fiscal years 21-22 and 22-23 budget. By way of introduction, the Rental Housing Committee is tasked in the Mobile Home Rent Stabilization Ordinance to establish a budget and charge the annual space rental fees in an amount sufficient to support that budget in section 46.98. And the initial startup costs were incurred once the Mobile Home Rent Stabilization Ordinance went into effect on October the 28th, using city staff and outside services, as well as operational expenses. We received interim funds from City Council until the Rental Housing Committee could collect annual rental space fees. And a total amount of almost $400,000 was advanced of which 107,000 was provided as a one-time non-reimbursable startup fund and 292,000 as a loan to be reimbursed. So for the 21-22 budget, the following key expenditures were discussed in the last meeting and agreed upon. I'm not going to mention all the numbers. They're also in your package. So moving on with these numbers, the calculation of the space rental fee comes out to $258.40 per space. Similarly, for the budget of 2022-23, a total budget was presented for $346,410 with the following key expenditures, as we discussed in the last meeting. So I will not repeat those numbers. Again, leading to the calculation of the space rent fees of $307 per space. The advantage of the first year was and the lower fees, because part of that annual budget was a one-time fund by city council that did not need it to be reimbursed to the city, and therefore not needing to be calculated inside the fees. So for tonight, we recommend that the rental housing committee adopt this resolution to adopt these budgets and the establishment of these space rental fees sufficient to support those budgets. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. The last time when we looked at 2021-22, the space rent was going to be something like $298 or something.
No, it was always, it was $258.40.
Okay, then it's a memory lapse on my part. Forget my question. I'm glad it's less. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Hand by Committee Member Griswold.
Thank you. I guess the question, Anki, what would occur? Is there language, since this is establishing the fee, have we already decided what would occur if there were an MOU for a particular park? Would that would they still pay the fee if there was an MOU?
That's a good question, and that has not been discussed at all. And the end of June, the city council will be receiving a staff report analyzing what happened in the stakeholder meetings and the public meetings, and evaluating the MOU proposals that were received. It also needs to add some chapters on how are these MOUs being enforced or complied with, and also do we recommend what types of fees commensurate with the amount of work that the city still might need to provide if an MOU was decided upon. So those are all very preliminary items that still need to be discussed towards the end of this fiscal year.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
No other hands.
Okay, since there are no more questions, I now invite public comment. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen. Andrea, are there any public comment hands raised?
No, there are no public comment hands.
Okay. I believe at this point, we're open for a motion to approve the budget.
Vice Chair?
I would motion to approve both budgets. I don't really see another option. So I motion to approve the 21-22 and 22-23 budget and establish the rental space fees as detailed in the attachments.
Committee Member Ramos?
I'll second that motion.
Andrea, go ahead.
Okay, we'll start with Committee Member Grunwald.
Aye.
Committee Member Rosas.
Aye.
Committee Member Ramos.
Yes.
Vice Chair Haynes Livesay.
Aye.
And Chair Almond.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Fabulous. Okay. On to 7.5, which is the election of a chairperson and a vice chairperson. We will begin with a presentation from staff.
Thank you again. Next slide, please. So today we're presenting to the Rental Housing Committee their yearly agenda item to elect one member as a chairperson and one member as a vice chairperson for the term May 1st of 2022 until April the 30th of 2023. And as a background, Section 1709A of the CSFRA provides for this annual happening within the Rental Housing Committee, and also describes the roles and responsibilities of a chair and the vice chair. As you can see, the chair presides over all meetings, signs the written resolutions, and meets with staff to set the agenda for the meetings. And in case of an absence or disability of this chair, the vice chair will take over those roles. So today we recommend that you deliberate and nominate and elect one member amongst your midst to serve as a chairperson and one as a vice chairperson for this coming year. This is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much. And I'm hoping we can have an open discussion here. There've been a couple of developments. Julian, as you know, is not at today's meeting. So since he and I are on the same term, I asked him whether he was interested in being either vice chair or chair at this point, and he respectfully declined both. So that eliminates one person. I guess at this point, we're open to first nominate a chairperson and then a vice chairperson. But I'd also like to find out what the interest is in various committee members, where you stand on whether you're interested in these roles. And I know historically, the vice chair becomes the chair. So I want to open it up first to Nicole, Vice Chair Haynes Livesay.
I mean, all else being equal, I am interested in the role.
Terrific, terrific. Okay, so that, well, I guess we could first just go ahead and nominate Vice Chair Haynes Livesay to chair. And then we'll deal with the vice chair role. So do I need, does somebody need to make a motion?
Sorry, I raised my hand so that we could go to public comment before we take votes.
Oh, sorry.
I think, do you want to take nominations before you take public comment? Because at this moment, it's all just procedural or public comment. But if you would like to take nominations from the members of the RHC
Yeah,
or the chair and the vice chair.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's take them one at a time. Let's start with the chairperson. I'd like to nominate Vice Chair Haynes Lipsey. She's been a part of the planning throughout the year, or at least once I brought her into the planning meetings. And I think she's fully capable of executing it beautifully.
Thank you. That is very kind. I've enjoyed our planning meetings for what it's worth.
Yeah, me too. I think it also helps to have the vice chair in on planning so that the learning curve once you become chair is minimized.
Absolutely.
Okay, so do we, I guess we take a vote at this point?
No, so you have a nomination. If you want
sorry.
to take public comment on that,
Okay,
and you should ask if there are any other nominations.
thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other nominations for chair of the Rental Housing Committee?
Sounds like no.
Y'all don't just clamor.
I know.
Come on now.
Dead silence here. I know. Okay, so then at this point, I should ask for public comment.
Yeah, on the chair. I think that
Okay.
makes the most sense.
Okay. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen.
We have a hand by Alex Brown. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hey, I think Nikki would be a great chair. I think she's going to bring a great deal of fiscal knowledge, confidence, competence, and the goodest languaging of all the goodness. So I can't wait to see her as chair.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public?
There are no other hands.
There are no other hands. So then we bring it back to committee for a vote. Am I right, Karen?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
All right, Andrea, call the roll.
All right, let's start with committee member Grunwald,
Aye.
committee member Rosas,
Aye.
committee member Rahma,
Hi, I'm so excited for the Haynes Lipsey administration.
You can't wait to get rid of me.
Vice Chair Haynes Lipsey,
Aye.
and Chair Almond.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations, Chair Haynes Lipsey. Okay, now we have an opening for vice chair, and I will take any nominations on this. We can also talk, technically Julian would have been the next in line and he has declined. And as far as chronologically next would be committee member Rosas, am I right? Would you be interested in the role?
I'm seriously thinking about this, but could I make a nomination?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so I guess I would like to nominate member Ramos for vice chair. I think this would be a good combination of the chair and the vice chair. Don't look so sad.
Committee member Ramos was a very effective chair the year before me. So you'd be stepping up again. So are there any other nominations? I mean, the only other person would be me, right?
Do you have any interest, Chair Almond?
No, I don't think so.
Committee member Ramos, do you have an interest?
So on principle, I believe that everyone should have their shot at this wonderful job at being chair and vice chair. But I've known committee member Rosas, and I understand that she has a lot on her plate right now that's causing her some concern and wanting to step up. And we heard from committee member, or from the report from the chair, that committee member Paradizella is declining as well. So I don't mind. I enjoy being vice chair. I enjoy being on the committee. I find you all fun in your own special ways. Every single one of you.
Well, that sounds like a rousingly positive statement. And committee member Rosas, you're not super interested in being nominated, is the impression I'm getting.
At this time, no, I'm not. Maybe next year, maybe the following years, but this year, I need to step back a little more.
2022 has just been a crazy year, hasn't it?
It
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a nomination that then we need to bring it back to the public. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Staff will display a countdown timer on the screen. I have a question. When does the official term start? So Chair Haynes-Lipsey would begin her role at the beginning of the May meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, she will set the agenda for the May meeting.
right. Okay. Okay, now we're open for public comment.
Alexander Brown, if you could unmute.
Welcome back, Vice Chair Ramos.
Are there any other members of the public?
There are no other.
Okay. Then we're ready for a vote. You guys are ready to get rid of me. Go on. Andrea?
Let's begin with committee member Grunwald,
Aye.
committee member Rosa,
Yes, I love this new administration.
committee member Ramos,
Yes.
vice chair Haynes-Lipsey,
Yes.
chair Almond.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, so we have a new administration. Congratulations to both of you. You're going to be fantastic. So now we go to committee staff announcements and updates.
Before we move on from this agenda item, I did want to say that I did appreciate the Almond administration of RHC for the past year. You did a very good job in a difficult year for all renters and landlords. This was a lot of multitasking and a lot of managing and a lot of urgency that we had to move this year, and you did a wonderful job, Chair Almond.
Thank you so much, committee member Ramos, vice chair Ramos.
We have a couple other hands from committee member Rosa and vice chair Haynes-Lipsey.
So I wanna shadow committee member Ramos's comments in regards to our chair. You did a wonderful job. I really learned a lot from you.
Oh,
Yeah, well, this is why I'm like, I think I can wait another year. Well, because it's a huge responsibility, and
Yes.
so and it was because how easily you made it seem, but once you're really doing the role, you're like, okay.
thank you so much. Community member Haynes Lipsey.
I'd like to echo my appreciation of Chair Almond, but also personally, it's been wonderful working with you. I really enjoyed getting to get the peek behind the curtain, which I know maybe wasn't always done historically, of doing some of the agenda setting together and just the time that we've spent together. So it's been really special to me, and I really do appreciate you. Chair
Thank
Almond, it's been wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Mwah.
You guys are gonna
My
make me
virtual
cry.
kiss.
Thank you all. You've been wonderful to work with, and I really enjoyed our team building session, and you know, to finally have mobile home regulations in almost completed, and to, after all the things, the ping pong back and forth, whether they were going to be covered or not covered, and who's going to administer it, and now we're finally administering it. I think it's a wonderful thing that we've pulled off, all of us. So I appreciate all of you, and the staff especially has been marvelous. The hand holding that they did. I was quaking in my boots at the first meeting, as some of you know. So it's been a wonderful growing process for me. And I appreciate all of you and the time that you set aside for this, and the thousands of hours that the staff puts in. With great appreciation, thank you all. And if there isn't anything more, do we still have staff announcements and updates? Okay, so I can go cry. Okay. Yeah. I'm handing it back for staff presentation.
Okay, so let's look at the upcoming events and workshops. So as Patricia mentioned earlier, I just want to start off by mentioning that the Housing and Eviction Prevention Help Center is going to start being the first and third Thursdays of the month starting in May. So we will have one this Thursday, and then next month we'll move to the first and third Thursdays. We will continue to be in the library on the first floor in the program room. So that's right next to the front doors and the elevator. And again, you can get help with your rent relief application follow-ups, understanding any sort of notices that tenants are receiving from landlords, or maybe any notices that landlords are intending to give to their tenants. And we also have our lawyer referrals there. And now also I do want to mention, we do also have the Help Center on Zoom still. So if you can't make it in person, you can join us on Zoom at mountainview.gov/eviction help clinic. All right, and now looking at our webinars. So we're still doing those virtually at the moment. We have our first mobile home park registration webinar tomorrow, and that will be at 3 p.m. And each mobile home landlord and property manager received an invitation to that. Following that, this week we will have our stakeholder meetings, and that will be going over the definition of base rent. So those will both be this Thursday, April 28th. The landlord-focused webinar is at 10:30 in the morning, and the tenant-focused bilingual English-Spanish webinar will be at 6 p.m. on Thursday. And the next webinar we have is for our CSFRA landlords, and we'll be doing another registration webinar for them. That will be Wednesday, May 11th at 3 p.m. Right, any questions about our events or workshops? If anyone's interested in joining those virtual webinars, you can go to mountainview.gov/RSP webinars.
And I also wanted to mention that coming up later in May, I believe on the 17th and 18th, but I would need to double check. We have mediation webinars for landlords and tenants. One is landlord focused and to help with answering questions related to mediation for unpaid rent. And one is tenant focused for mediation related to unpaid rent. And that one will be English and Spanish.
You should be able to find those also on the mountainview.gov/RSP webinars. So you can just click whichever webinars you're interested in and sign up for them there. Any questions about that?
I did also want to mention one more thing. We happen to have office hours every Tuesday, and anyone from the public can join those office hours that are virtual by going to mountainview.gov/RSP office hours and signing up there for those. Those are from 10 to 12, again, every Tuesday. And tomorrow we have one specifically for small property landlords.
Is that the end of the staff presentation?
Yes.
It is, okay. Are there any questions or comments from committee members?
Looks like we have a hand by committee member Ramos.
I just wanted to throw in a webinar idea. I had a friend of mine, she was sad because she was told that she couldn't have a pet because the CSFRA wouldn't allow that because there would be a pet rent. And so I said, no, we have this voluntary agreement. So it'd be nice to have maybe a webinar for landlords and tenants on how to do that recent regulation that we did about voluntary increases for adding a roommate, adding a pet, adding a roommate pet, or whatever that might be of interest. I feel like that might be a fun webinar for some people. And I think that might be well received to see the wiggle room that we can have within our laws.
That's a great idea. Thank you for that. We do have some petition focused workshops and webinars planned for the summer, and we were planning on putting that information into them as well. So we can definitely do that.
Also, I had a question. I think I know the answer to this, but with the stakeholder meetings, can tenants attend the landlord meeting and vice versa?
These are public meetings, so everyone can in general join. But the focus in the morning meeting is more geared towards landlord input request, and in the evening it also provides translations into Spanish, and they are more tenant focused input requests.
And that's true of all of our webinars that are labeled tenant or landlord or open to all. They're always open to all. However, the content is tailored to the specific audience.
Sure. Well, that's how I answered it. I said it was open to anyone. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we're ready to adjourn. And I'm happy to adjourn my last meeting. The meeting is adjourned at 8:59. No, wait a minute. What is it?
54.
8:50. I have 8:54.
Yep.
The next rental housing committee meeting is scheduled to be held on Monday, May 23rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Good night and hugs to all of you. Thank you so much.